Hi, everybody. It's Stefan Molyneux from Freedomain Radio. So, Mike and I did, in fact, watch the debate. Mike, did you watch it end to end?
The pay-per-view cage match masquerading as a debate? Yes, I did.
Yeah, it was. I got to tell you, the man Trump brings good television to the front. It was fiery. It was fairly intense at parts, and there was, of course, Kasich doing his usual. Do I have to be the only adult in the room now, little children?
Mommy and
Which is
Daddy are
always
fighting. Mommy and
yeah.
Daddy are fighting. Please stop. I feel uncomfortable.
That stuff drives me insane. Years and years ago, there was an old sitcom with Candice Bergen called Murphy Brown. I watched a couple of them. And this is where that whole single mom debate came out with the vice president at the time, Quayle. Anyway, the guys were having some intense debate about something that was actually quite important. And Candice Bergen's character was like, oh, why don't you all just whip out your penises and measure them on the table, right? And it was that stuff.
Trump might not have a problem with that, actually, but...
Yeah. No, and it's like, the fact that we're debating immigration might mean that you European ladies might have a slightly better New Year's. So it's really frustrating to me when people say, well, forget about this important topic. It's all just, we should just be nice to each other. And it's like, politics is not about being nice.
Nope.
Goodwill, okay, charity, Salvation Army, maybe to some degree. This is not, politics is not about being nice. Politics is about fighting tooth and nail for what you believe in, for the most part, not pursued by politicians or what other people will be willing to accept, the lies. But it's not nice. This idea is like, I can't believe that people are fighting over the future of this country. And it's like that if there's any place to fight, then essential ideas and ideals should be that place. And it just kept getting interrupted, which was kind of annoying.
Oh, the women in Sweden and Germany probably wish there was a bit more vigorous debate around taking in tons of refugees as they're now experiencing a true rape culture. So Kasich with his "can't we all just get along" trope was pretty irritating.
We get it. You're uncomfortable in the alpha clash. I get it. I get it. You're just not comfortable, and you're trying to appeal to the cucks in the planet. But that was annoying. Jeb Bush.
Oh God.
I mean, okay, if a small town needs a secretary for their accountants club, I could get behind this guy. The fact that he's blown through, $100 million plus to scrape in around fourth or fifth in various domains, man, that should tell you. I mean, with all the political experience in his family, like they say, oh, well, Trump inherited some money and so on. Yeah, like everyone who wins a lottery becomes $10 billion media and real estate mogul.
He inherited money in a company that he was working in since his late teens and developed and actually grew its value. So it wasn't just an outright gift, but yes.
So yeah, the guy did inherit some money. But think of how much political capital the Jeb Bush has inherited, right? His father was president, his brother was president, his mother apparently is ageless and undead. I'm sure they tried to bury her 4 times. The hand comes out of the spanking hand, I might add. But how much political capital does this guy get? And he squandered it. And
all
this
the
son
connections,
of a bitch,
inroads with the
all the
establishment.
donor lists.
Oh,
yeah, he is a highly controllable donor puppet. And oh my God, this eminent domain thing. I know we talked about it last time, so we don't want to do the Trump side of things, but Jeb Bush, so not only did his family use eminent domain to build a stadium in part of a football team, I think it was that they were ownerships that had ownership of, but the guy also used eminent domain to strip owners and property owners of over 600,000 trees, right? Because there was some, plague or pestilence going through the citrus crop.
this is when he was governor of Florida.
When he was governor of Florida, he used eminent domain and threatened people with, jail and fines if they didn't comply. Let people in. They just hacked down people's ancient trees and, their gardens were left shredded and broken up. I mean, basically, he's like a villain in Lord of the Rings. You're just coming through and cutting down the ends. And he used eminent domain for all of that. And it didn't even stop. Naturally, of course, it didn't even stop the plague that was causing problems. And now they've had to pay millions and millions of dollars in fines for people who've had legal problems with the fact that their property was just stripped from them without permission. So, I don't know.
Hard to take the moral high ground on eminent domain when you oversaw the use of eminent domain to a larger extent than anything Donald Trump has ever done. That's pretty
Quite a
precious.
lot of larger. And at least Trump got something built. This guy just hacked down a bunch of trees, not very environmentally friendly, I might add, and didn't even stop the disease that was the problem. So, oh my God, it's just horrendous.
Don't make fun of his family, Steph. Don't say
Oh,
anything mean about his family. We might find him
okay,
crying
first
in
of
the
all,
corner.
I hate the genetic self-praise. My family is magnificent. It's like you know you're just praising yourself, right? My father is fantastic. My father is the best man in the known universe in this or any other dimension, including Jesus probably. And my mother is the bravest woman and the most strongest woman. It's like, you know, you're just praising yourself. You're saying all these things about yourself. And why the hell, when your father's been president, your brother's been president, and your ancient grizzled mom is all over the campaign trail, can people not talk about your family? It seems, I mean, if his family were monks over in some Spanish mountain, okay, understand, leave the family out of it. But if they're all over politics and people are arguing the legacy of Obama and why did Obama come in? Because George Bush was so terrible especially towards the end of his presidency with cucking up the entire economy. So yes, given that America is now, and Europe is dealing with the aftermath of various wars, the Hillary-sponsored war in Libya, the George W. Bush sponsored or initiated war in Iraq, the fact that the entire region's destabilized, people all spreading into Europe. Yeah, it seems like a pretty relevant thing to talk about. No, you can't attack my family. Hey, Jeb, I've got an idea for you. If you care about people's families, how about the 500,000 or so Iraqi families or 250,000 Iraqi families who are now missing a family member because of what your brother did? How about those families could be talked about a little bit? But no, don't touch my family.
and and no one
This unreality.
and no one has touched his own family with his wife, his criminal children. Who, if you want a rampant look at criminal misgivings, please look up George W. Bush's children, which all three of them have had run-ins with the law that are pretty significant. No one's talked about that, so we can't even say you're going after my children or anything. He got upset that Trump had said pretty much relayed what Jeb had written in his immigration book on the first page about how immigration represents his wife and his family. And they got upset at Trump previously for saying that, I can see how he'd be a little sympathetic to Mexicans, given that his wife is from Mexico and, that type of thing. He was so upset about that. And now we're talking about the political dynasty aspect of his family, and how dare you talk about their record or anything having to do with them. His mother, she was the strongest person that he knew. Maybe he should have listened to her when she said that there's been enough Bushes in political office, been enough Bushes as president, and that Jeb shouldn't run, but didn't pay attention to that.
The Bushes, by and large, seem to have gotten a fair amount of their family fortune going by supplying weapons to Adolf Hitler's growing Nazi movement in the 1930s. So I don't necessarily want to go that far back in time. But they are, a little bit on the New Jersey pinstripe suit side of, all fortunes become honorable over time, but at the root of many people's fortunes are grave crimes. And there are certainly some pretty untoward stuff where the Bushes got their start from. And,
Should we talk about how George W. Bush kept us all safe? Should we talk about that now, or should we wait till later to go over that?
I don't know. Should I pace myself? It's hard to say. How much does people want to watch me visibly age during the course of this conversation? No, go ahead, Mike. Let's hear a little bit about how George Bush's amazing shield of self-righteousness and politically correct lack of racial profiling kept Americans safe.
Okay, well, first off, this came up because in the debate, Jeb just multiple times kept saying, George W. Bush, my brother, kept America safe. And it's like, okay, this isn't even hard. Obviously, 9/11 happened on George W. Bush's watch. Okay? Obviously, it happened. So Trump brought that up as everyone sitting on their couch at home with a brain brought up themselves. And here's some facts about it. Okay, so George W. Bush received a presidential daily briefing on August 6, 2001, in which he was warned, bin Laden determined to strike in U.S. After he got that report, he went fishing. Okay, so... Then, according to the book, The 1% Doctrine, Bush, after the briefing, told the CIA briefer, all right, you've covered your ass now. So, very concerned about this briefing. Then,
To be fair, I do think the fish were biting that day.
oh, it's important to get out
So
there.
you got to weigh these things, man.
It's important to get out there.
Where else is a president supposed to get food?
I mean, if the weather
Man's
breaks,
got to
it's
eat.
tough, you know? All right, let's fast forward a bit to an airline ticket agent that actually was the person to check in hijacker Mohammed Atta the morning of September 11th. He later said this: I looked up and asked them the standard questions. One guy was looking at me. It sent a chill through me. Something in my stomach churned. And subconsciously I said to myself, if they don't look like Arab terrorists, nothing does. Then I gave myself a mental slap. In over 34 years, I had checked in thousands of Arab travelers. I had never thought this before. And I said to myself, that's not nice to think. They are just two Arab businessmen. And the reason why this is important in the context of George W. Bush, as governor on racial profiling, he said, Arab Americans are racially profiled in what is called secret evidence. People are stopped, and we've got to do something about that. And he was very strong on racial profiling and considered it racism. So here you are with an airline ticket handler, someone who, you kind of want to say something if they see something or they feel something.
That's kind of the last line of defense,
he gets
unless
the
you
chills
have like
through his
severely
bones.
ninja stewardesses. But so go on.
Yeah, he gets the chill through his bones, and he doesn't say something. Why? Because he's afraid of being called a racist. And there's a long list of people who had, racially profiled and then been penalized and lost their jobs in airline industries because of this. So, very similar to what happened in San Bernardino. You had neighbors who, oh, gee, a lot of suspicious activity around that married couple there. But, gee, we don't want to be called racist, so we don't want to say anything, so we're just going to shut our mouth. And, oh, look, lots of people dead, bloody on the floor. So here's another example of racial profiling, which, of course, George W. Bush was very strong against. Thanks. And then, of course, he stuck to that by, attacking the wrong country, because all Arabs are like that. But that's a whole nother one.
Well, he didn't want to racially profile Saudi Arabia, for heaven's sakes.
Oh, no.
I mean, so 17 of the 19 hijackers were from Saudi Arabia, but it's in the region, and they look similar, and some of them have a similar religion. So, yeah, I think, if you don't want to narrow it down to a particular ethnicity focused on a geographical area where the attacks, say, originated, well, just go nuke Iraq and all's well.
But then it'd be hard to sell them weapons, Steph. That'd be
Well, yeah, that would be ironic. American conflicts around the world are like basically shells with American flags going both ways.
Mm-hmm.
That's the tragic and horrifying thing about it. And this, when Donald Trump said at the beginning, America doesn't I don't have time. America doesn't have time for political correctness. This is what we're talking about. I mean, when you just think about, of course, knowing that the U.S. had meddled in Middle Eastern affairs for, 60, 70 years now, and of course the deaths of millions of Muslims around the world over that time. Okay, so you're kind of at war with the Middle East. So, of course, you've got to profile people who are coming in. And when you're specifically warned that bin Laden is determined to attack in the U.S., then you'd really want to put extra focus on Middle Eastern people, because not a lot of guys in kilts in Al-Qaeda, from what I've seen from the training videos. Too much sand in the nads. I think that's a challenge, especially for the intact men. So
when you get the pat downs, it's very chafing. I just want to point that out.
Yeah, actually, I find if I wear a kilt, I get far fewer pat downs, especially if I request them. But that's perhaps a topic for another time. So if this this is the little forks. These are the turning points in history that people need to be aware of. If this ticket agent had been encouraged to say, look, if you find some full of rage lunatic from the Middle East, let's subject him to a little bit of additional questioning. Forget about the old people from Des Moines traveling with their grandchildren. Focus on, here's the profile and so on. If that guy had been stopped, right, if the attack had been stopped, okay, no 9/11, immediately you've got 3,000 people still alive and, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of property still around. You're not going to get the Patriot Act. You're not going to need the Fed to print all this money to make up for what was happening in Afghanistan and what was happening in Iraq as the 01 and 03 wars that started. You don't get a housing crash. Without a housing crash, you don't get the collapse of the economy that puts Obama in. Without Obama, you don't get the continued destabilization of the Middle East. You don't get all of these people swarming into Europe and undermining European civilization. So this just decision, no racial profile, if you look at the dominoes that are put forward, you know, you wouldn't have 500,000 to 1 million Iraqi dead. You would not have the rise of ISIS. The entire region wouldn't have been destabilized. You wouldn't have Iran taking over vast sections of Iraq. You wouldn't have had probably a civil war in Syria or in Libya. And so all of this, you know, one decision, no racial profiling, leads to all of this stuff. Political correctness is mass murderous in ways that are really, it is a sort of, it is a biological weapon in that it's delivered by raised eyebrows, highly hysterical and offended leftists. It is a bioweapon, and the effects of it, beyond staggering.
So instead of that being offensive, Donald Trump calling George W. Bush a liar. That's what everyone was upset about at the debate. By everyone, I talk about the political establishment and all the donors in the audience with their tickets, upset that Marco Rubio and George W. Bush weren't doing better.
Yeah, you know, it's really annoying when people don't play nice in an ugly game. Just astonishing.
Well, there's a lot of people that are very upset about, you know, the back and forth and how much vitriol there was flowing. It was nice to see the thin veneer of nicety removed for once. I mean, this is what politics is. We're talking about morals. We're talking about important things in the world. You know, this is life or death stuff in many ways. You know, smiling for someone who has a policy that's going to lead to your demise potentially. Yeah, you know, I don't exactly think that that's warranted. That's just fake and niceties. But back on the whole, Donald Trump saying that George W. Bush lied regarding weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Lots of people were upset about that because, first off, the idea that that would be uttered on a Republican debate stage in a mainstream format, holy hell! That's that was something. That was something. There's certainly a lot of people that believe that, and you know they have reasons to believe that. I'll run through this. George W. Bush met a Palestinian delegation during the Israeli-Palestinian summit in Egypt 4 months after the U.S.-led invasion of Iraq in 2003. The Palestinian foreign minister noted Bush said, "I am driven with a mission from God. God would tell me, George, go and fight these terrorists in Afghanistan. And I did. And then God would tell me, George, go and end the tyranny in Iraq. And I did. And now again, I feel God's words coming to me. Go get the Palestinians their state, and get the Israelis their security, and get peace in the Middle East. And by God, I'm going to do it." Spoiler, he didn't do it. So, ulterior motive?
God is pretty specific in his foreign policy recommendations. That's... You know, that's quite surprising that God is a neocon. That's not something I would really get from the New Testament. I'm not sure that Jesus would say, blow these people up and irradiate these people and genetically destroy everyone in Fallujah with your horrible weapons. God as a neocon is something that I was not sure most theologians would support, but it seems to be right there in George Bush's vacant, expansive head.
So whether or not he outright lied and that they knew that there were not weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, he certainly lied about the degree of certainty they were in this. In that, there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and he presented it as 100% certainty. So,
well, not only were there weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, but Condoleezza Rice... Sorry, I always have to do that. Just kidding. Condoleezza Rice was saying that we don't want the smoking gun to be in the form of a mushroom cloud. In other words, not only were there weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, but Saddam Hussein had the technology to launch and land them in American cities. That was how the war was sold. And to my knowledge, there was absolutely no evidence, even remotely, to say that Saddam Hussein had nuclear weapons, intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of reaching American cities.
And you just ran through the list of consequences that have come out of the invasion of Iraq and the Iraq War in totality. You know, if you're going to make claims like that, given the consequences that are likely to unfold, you better be pretty damn sure. And if you present it as sheer certain fact, and it's not true, I am comfortable calling that a lie. I absolutely am.
Well, you look at Donald Rumsfeld when he's questioned about where the weapons are. I think it was outside Tikrit. He's like, well, they're in the north and the east, south, and the west. So apparently somewhere on the planet there are, And yeah, I mean, if you're going to set events in motion that threaten the very survival of European civilization and destroy the economy and maim and kill hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, yeah, I think being a little bit certain might be helpful.
He
And of
called my
course,
brother a
the
liar.
constant
It's terrible.
intimation that Saddam Hussein had something to do with 9/11, which
Hmm.
he emphatically and categorically did not, by all the intelligence I've ever read. And so this constant tying together of Saddam Hussein and Al Qaeda and 9/11. And to the point where I can't remember, 30 or 40 or 50% of Americans thought that Saddam Hussein was behind 9/11, and that's why the attack was going on. Good job, public school. Good job, media. I tell you, '03 was the last time I ever had even the slightest respect for the mainstream media, who just turned up to be bloodthirsty vampires of infinite war pumping. It was just horrendous. Yeah, so all these lies were just the whole damn ruling class and media class colluded to create one of the most disastrous decisions in American history. And you can't talk about it
Nope.
in a debate
Nope.
with the brother of the guy who did it.
Don't pick up. Who's only running because his family has a political dynasty, essentially. It's not like he's
And
overflowing with charisma. It's not like
who
he's an
wouldn't
engaging
even
speaker.
and who wouldn't even answer if it was a good or bad thing
It took him
to
like
go
what,
to
a
war.
week to go back and forth and
Iraq.
actually answer the question.
It took him a week.
You know, you might want to have that one figured out by the time you're actually announcing your candidacy for president. It's kind of important. But
Well, and of course, because Trump said don't go, he's the guy who can say, yeah, we shouldn't have gone. The other guys, I mean, this is the thing, and we talked about this before on the show, my God. The really tough thing, like once you get a country embroiled in a war, and once it has suffered, and again, the suffering in America is virtually nothing compared to the suffering that has gone on in the Middle East. But just looking at it from an American perspective, once you've got people's limbs blown off, once you've got people in the ground, and this, a couple of thousand people dead directly in combat, but that's small relative to the number of people who've been maimed and injured just by being around the war, like in training accidents and so on.
yep.
Tens of thousands of people have been killed or injured outside of direct combat. And
The ripple effect out to families.
yeah, so once you get people to sacrifice that much, how do you tell them it was not only for nothing, it was for worse than nothing? Not only did you going over there not bring peace and stability and a free market democracy to the Middle East, which anybody who knows anything about history and genetics could tell you immediately was not going to happen, but not only did you not achieve what the goal was, that you did not achieve the mission, you achieved really the exact opposite. Instead of stabilizing the Middle East, you've wildly destabilized the Middle East. Instead of keeping the West safe, you have now exposed the West to further and greater dangers. Your sacrifice was not only for nothing, it was for whatever the opposite of achievement is. And there's not a good enough word in English, but I'm sure by the end of this election cycle, we'll have one. But it has been the complete opposite of everything that could be conceived of as successful relative to the goal. How do you say that to all the people? They're looking down and they say, I have no legs, so that Europe could drown in migrants. Like, what a complete nightmare to have to talk about. And I think Trump is really the only guy who can talk about it that frankly.
Well, you could add this to a long list of things that the only reason it's even a topic of conversation is because Donald Trump's in the race, and he's bringing up these uncomfortable truths. We're talking about immigration. Why? Well, because Donald Trump brought up immigration. We're talking about immigrant and crime stats because Donald Trump brought them up. There's a whole gamut of things that, oddly enough, are not being talked about by the people that are accepting millions and millions of dollars from lobbyists that directly benefit from mass immigration and other various policies. Funny how that works, that the only guy in the Republican scene that's not taking money from these people is talking about the things that no one else dare talk about. I'm sure that's unrelated completely.
Yeah, when the hell do Americans have a venue or the basic or any chance to talk about the disasters of America's Middle Eastern wars? I mean, this is bringing the war up to Republicans. It's like bringing up abortion with Democrats. You don't talk about it. You don't talk. I mean, certainly Hillary is really radical when it comes to abortion, like partial birth and all that kind of crap. But you can't bring that. But when do Americans get a chance to process arguably one of the greatest and most disastrous decisions in the last 100 years of American history? When do people get to talk about that? Well, what was amazing in that debate was that topic came up.
Yep.
And boy, talk about, Dad's a drunk, but we can't talk about it. You know, the elephant in the room kind of stuff that everyone's been ignoring since the war was first launched, like 16 years ago almost now. $2 trillion, and that's an underestimation relative to the total costs. I've heard $4 or $5 trillion in the total life costs of this war. When the hell were Americans ever supposed to circle back and say, okay, time for a review, time for a postmortem on this war?
A postmortem on a government policy? How's the war on drugs working out? Oh, wait, never mind.
Yeah.
How's all that money into climate change research working out? Oh, wait, never mind. Circle back on a government policy? Yeah, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and okay, so I think I could talk about that for a while, but
well, there's two other things on this I want to mention. Just
go.
around this specific point. There's some people saying, "Oh man, he said that about George W. Bush. He's going to really cost himself Republican voters in the primary and Republican voters in the general." Donald Trump is running a general election campaign. If people haven't figured it out yet, you really should look into it. He is courting Democrats, the likes of which you can't imagine. I mean, he's going to win states that no Republican has won since Reagan time. And, that line, if there were Republicans, George W. Bush is really unpopular. Look at his public opinion polling. He's not looked at favorably, even amongst many Republicans. So the fact that, he said this line, now Republicans aren't going to vote for him. Well, for every Republican that's not going to vote for him, there's going to be Republicans or independents or libertarians that are going to go, holy hell, he had balls to say that. I can't believe he started this conversation that are going to vote for him. And I guarantee there's a bunch of Democrats that are going to say, oh man, can you believe he actually said this as a Republican on a Republican debate stage? He's getting credit from people just for his bravado and guts that, no political candidate has seen in an eternity. And this goes to my second point. For all the people that for a long time have said, oh man, how come you're not talking about Rand Paul? Rand Paul, and I know Rand Paul has suspended his presidential campaign, but this is the type of stuff that Rand Paul should have been doing if he wanted to be effective. He could have made some waves and had this type of discussion, had these types of conversations, but instead he was courting black leftists, libertarians, trying to get them involved in the political party, going after the Black Lives Matter crowd, which was a surefire losing bet. And did he start any of these big discussions on a national debate stage when he was up there? No, he really didn't. And that's the type of stuff that, hindsight being 2020, probably would have had a much different effect. So.
Well, I don't know that everyone's saying, oh my gosh, it's so dangerous for Trump to criticize people like the Bushes and Lindsey Graham in South Carolina. Bullshit. Sorry. Jeb has been in single digits in South Carolina for the last couple of months.
Spending Lindsey how much, right?
Yeah, Lindsey Graham was in single digits in his own state until he dropped out of the race. I don't know, just South Carolina is an establishment stronghold. They are neoconservative war hawks and so on. Newt Gingrich won the state in 2012, despite the fact that Romney was pushing heavy into that state. So I don't know, just this received political wisdom, if any, like the entrance of Trump to me has decimated the role of the consultants and the people who say, well, I know for sure how you should approach this, because this guy's coming in from outside. He's only been a politician for 9 months now or something like that. He's dominating the races. He's winning all over the place. Conventional wisdom is completely wrong. And all of the people giving everyone advice is giving them the wrong advice, because even when Trump says, I'm doing really well, or demonstrates that he's doing really well by talking about certain topics like immigration and the war and so on, and jobs, well, everyone else still keeps shying away from these topics. And it's like, what he's winning, what he's doing.
Yes. Well, one person doesn't steer away from taking on Trump's opinions when they're popular, and that's Ted Cruz, who we haven't talked about a whole lot regarding this debate. Good old Ted.
He broke into Spanish, right?
Yes, he did.
I wasn't I didn't have ear jangles or something like that. Because didn't Rubio said, you don't even speak Spanish. And Cruz then broke into Spanish.
Yeah,
and,
Cruz reportedly heard Rubio give an interview on Univision. And Rubio's retort to that, instead of rebutting that he actually didn't say the thing that Cruz was claiming that he said, oh, well, you don't even speak Spanish, so how would you know? It's not like there's interpreters in 2016 or anything. But, so then Cruz just burst into Spanish, which, interesting strategy.
I don't, I don't want to get all waspy here, but I'm not sure that the average guy, man, woman who's interested in Trump or even general conservative principles, I don't know that they really like in a nationally televised presidential debate. I don't know that they really like getting Spanish lessons from an anchor baby and a Cubanadian, and that is a real, like, I don't know. All it did was remind everyone their particular origins, and that of course leads to, oh look, they're both fluent in Spanish. I wonder how they feel about immigration, which then plays right back into Trump's strengths with the average voter on this side of the aisle.
Hmm. Well, at least for this debate, Rubio.exe had a fresh install of whatever drive was misconfigured for the last debate. And, he was able to spout his talking points in a very fluent fashion. And one of the most enjoyable for me back and forth in the proverbial cage match slash debate was Rubio and Cruz battling it out over honesty. And I've never been a big Rubio fan for a multitude of reasons. But I gotta say, him calling Ted Cruz out on just being a complete liar about oh so many subjects, that was rather enjoyable to watch.
Since then,
Yes, since then, quite a
since
few
then,
things have happened.
one, DJ Trump has, I guess, done two things that are somewhat interesting. The first is that he basically feels that the RNC has broken their pledge. So he had a pledge saying, look, you treat me fairly, I'm not going to run as a third candidate, independent candidate.
It goes
And now
both
he's
ways.
saying,
You treat me fairly, I won't run third party. We signed this pledge. If you don't treat me fairly, everything's on the table.
and the fact that these debates, the one thing that's important to understand for people, and Trump, I didn't even know this, of course, and who the hell thinks about who's in the audience? Like, I don't go to a movie checking out everyone around me. Ooh, who's here, right? And so when Trump, and it was in the last debate, I think that he first pointed out that the audience is stacked with donors, right?
Yep.
So the question is, like, if Trump can fill a 10,000 seat arena, why the hell is it closed in the debate? Like,
Wouldn't you want
why
to get
is the
more
audience
people involved in the political process, have this big
Absolutely.
show? I mean, you think that would be common sense, and you could probably sell out a 15,000 seat stadium for this type of thing. I gotta think.
Easy.
Raise some money for the party, raise some money maybe for charity, lots of things you can do. But instead, they book like a 1,600 seat venue and just hand out tickets to donors, and then you get reactions where people are cheering Jeb Bush like he's John Lennon in his prime.
Right, right, and it is way, like, the cheers and boos are way out of proportion to the electorate. And what it does is it shows such an extraordinary level of contempt for the electorate, because what it says is, well, the guy you don't like is getting more cheers at the debate, so I'm sure your vote will switch. Like, oh my God! There's more cheering there. I'll go over there. I mean, what are they like? What kind of mouth-breathing, neck-bearded morons do they think their voters are? There are louder noises there. I'm going there. I mean, oh my God! Like, it's truly mental. What an insult it is. They do far better. But of course, if the actual audience was composed of people enthusiastic about the political process, then when Jeb would make a speech, it'd be like, yay, coming from his mom.
People would
And
go
when
and
Trump made a speech, I mean, the place would erupt. And the sense of the momentum that Trump has would then be more evident to people. Whereas this way, they're really pushing against the electorate's desires. And all it does is drive people out to go vote for who won the election for Trump. I mean, it really is showing just how disconnected the RNC has got from their base.
Yeah, if everyone went to the concession stand when Jeb Bush started to talk, that wouldn't exactly look good for the establishment candidate. I mean, you have an entire audience booing Donald Trump. You have candidates going after Donald Trump. You do understand that somehow your stupidity has turned a guy with $10 billion, 43 years of media experience, into an underdog on that debate stage where everyone's going after him. Could you be more incompetent in trying to achieve your goal of taking the man down than to make him appear to be the ultimate underdog, fighting back against the entire party, everyone on the debate stage, the entire audience? There's probably a guy selling hot dogs in the third row that took a swing at Trump during the commercial break. It's just from a human psychology standpoint, they paint the guy as an ultimate underdog, and then they're shocked when he rises in the polls. Come on. Are you that stupid? I don't know.
Well, they're fighting for their lives, right? If Trump wins, there's an entire I mean, this is what's so important for people to understand is that if Trump wins, there is an entire class of politicos and consultants and politicians and hangers-on and everyone who's given advice and all the people who get those plum K Street jobs, the lobbyists and so on, they're out of a job. Like if Trump wins without being bought and paid for by special interest groups, all of those people, this is an entire multi-billion-dollar industry. They're all out of a job. They're fighting for their lives. If he wins, they're done. So they've got to do stupid stuff to try and stop him, because if they do smart stuff, they'll support him. And then they're out of a job. Nobody works that hard to put themselves out of a job. Other people got to come in and put themselves out of a job and put those people out of a job. You know, like the guys who make the horse and carriage equipment, they're not the guys working really hard to develop the car. You know, someone else has got to come in and push them out of a job. So I kind of get where they're going from. Like, what choice do they really have? They've got to try and put him down, and they can't put him down in any rational way. So they got to do stupid little tricks, which exposes how terrible they are. And, you know, maybe they're hoping to have him run as a third-party candidate and push him away and all that. But I think if that would have happened, there would just be an open revolt in the Republican Party. I mean, he is the last hope that the Republicans have for anything that they want to achieve after the failure and co-opting of the Tea Party candidates into the usual snout in the trough, Washington blood-swilled taxpayer trough of infinite feeding. It's Trump or bust, and if they push him out, I think they might be surprised at what comes after that.
Oh, God, to show how hungry people are for an anti-establishment candidate, I mean, Ben Carson is still polling relatively well, you know, comparatively to all the people that have dropped out in many places, and Ben Carson. I'm
now, Mike,
a great neurosurgeon.
Mike, I'd really like to thank you for finally giving me an opportunity to say something in this conversation. Thanks.
You know, Ben, that didn't work the last 14 times you said it in debates. Could you actually maybe say something of note so that you're not, you know, trailing in the polls, so people actually want you to be asked a question? I mean, you're a free market guy. At this point, the general electorate doesn't care at all what you think. I mean, at least Jeb Bush has donors that care what he thinks. You don't even have that. Comparatively, so.
Could we have a commander-in-chief in charge of the nukes who's also really whiny? He'll be the
more passive aggression for president. Yes,
yeah, passive aggressive president. I
think America should try a passive aggressive black man as the president of the United States. Wouldn't that be a wonderful idea?
That's diversity for you. Enough decisive people. I can just see him at NATO, like at meetings, you know. Well, thanks. I really appreciate you giving me the chance to finally weigh in on this situation. I mean, I really feel like I've been waiting for a long time, and you guys could have called on me earlier. Man, oh man.
I'm not a politician, and I haven't done much in the way of research in this area, but it's taken you a while to call on me, and I'm kind of upset about that. Go to bencarson.com and send me money, please.
Hey, man's got to grow his email list. One of the things that what I did like about Ben Carson, though, was him basically saying, yeah, it's great to see everyone on the stage pretending that they're military experts. They're not, and neither am I. That is so true. The fact that it's like, okay, healthcare, go. How would you solve the profound crisis in American healthcare? And how would you promote world stability? And what would you do with the military? And what would you do with this? And it's like, oh, come on. You can maybe be good at one or two things in your life. Maybe, if you work really, really hard. But this idea that these guys are just genius disco balls, you know. Okay, explain to me how the gravity waves recently discovered by physicists validates Einstein's theory of relativity. Go! And it's like, okay, now explain to me quantum mechanics. Okay, explain to me the price-earnings ratio of Price-Waterhouse. It's like...
Well, Steph, to be fair, Rubio's probably got 20 seconds on it that he could spout off about how... carefully manicured 20 seconds.
I just want to know how much internet bandwidth and YouTube storage space is taken up by people doing remixes of his 20-second speech. I've got to assume it's quite a lot. I mean, if I got remixed doing Mike Brown's rap sheet, rap lyrics during the Ferguson video, I'm sure that people have done quite a few number of Rubio Biots 2.0 kind of stuff.
All right, well, we got pulled a little bit from Ted Cruz in the latest happenings between... yeah, I know. We've cruised away from Cruz. Well, Trump came out today and has said this. He's a liar, referring to Cruz. Now he'll apologize, but I don't want an apology after the election. I want it before. And if he doesn't, I'm going to bring a lawsuit. Because, in my opinion, based on what I've learned over the last few days from very top lawyers, he doesn't even have the right to serve as president or even run as president. He was born in Canada. So now Trump has given Cruz a deadline to either apologize for his false statements, which we'll get into the false statements in a second, or he's going to file the suit to have him removed from the ballots because he's not a natural-born citizen, and by that fact, he's not allowed to be on the ballots or run for president. So, wow. Now we know what people are going to be talking about until the election, about how Ted Cruz is a liar. Whether or not this lawsuit ever gets filed, just brilliant politics, you have to say.
Well, I don't know if you've confirmed this or not, but Trump said, so for those who don't know, the story goes that Cruz's people told a whole bunch of people in the last caucus election that Ben Carson was dropping out of the race. Mm-hmm. And to give your votes to Cruz, basically. And it was not true. All he did was taking a day or two off, right? And apparently he's just dropping out of it. So Ted Cruz went to, in the next debate, he said, Ben, I'm sorry. He sounds like a Looney Tunes character trying to master a Shakespeare. But he said, Ben, I'm sorry. And you would assume, as an apology, that somewhat implicit in apology is not doing it again. Like if I punch someone and say sorry, and punch them again and say sorry, and punch them again and say sorry, well, you get the idea. But Trump was saying that the same thing happened again, that robocalls were coming out saying that Donald Trump is not going to be in the race and you should vote for Cruz.
Here's the deal on that. Okay, there's a poll conducted by a place identifying themselves as Remington Research. It's saying, these polls, they essentially, can you believe that Rubio supports this really bad thing? Would you vote for him for supporting this really bad thing? It's like essentially planting poison pills in
activist polling.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Remington Research is a consulting firm that was started by Ted Cruz's campaign manager, Jeff Rowe. Now, Cruz's director of research, Chris Wilson, says, we're not doing any robo-polls in South Carolina. It's not us making those calls. Anyone can make those calls as Remington Research to screw with reporters and make Jeff look like he's doing something. So someone is doing push polls that are identified as Remington Research, and you don't know if it's Cruz doing them, or if it's Cruz's campaign guy's company, or if it's someone else identifying them as Cruz's campaign's company. The Washington Post has put out something tying it to Cruz and Remington Research, but it's still, it's not like it's 100% or anything. But, with Cruz, it seems where there's smoke, there's fire. There's a whole lot of these random coincidences and things where it's like, oh, gee golly, we'd give you the benefit of the doubt if there wasn't 800 examples of these little political tricks and lies coming from your campaign. So this is one of the things on the list that both Trump and Rubio, who were criticized strongly in these push polls, are upset about. And this is something else. Ted Cruz went on Meet the Press on Sunday and said, if Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders wins, or for that matter, if Donald Trump wins, whose record is indistinguishable from them on a great many of issues, then we will see the Second Amendment written out of the Constitution. Donald Trump wants the Second Amendment written out of the Constitution. I don't know that that's a policy paper on his website, or that's a statement that he's ever made. Matter of fact, I know that's a statement he's never made before. I think way back when there was some verbiage around like an assault weapon ban where he gave it some lip service or whatnot. But, when it comes to abolishing the Second Amendment, having it written out of the Constitution, you don't get a bigger lie than that. And he said it Sunday on Meet the Press. And this is towards Donald Trump, the same guy who was taking lots of heat in the media in the event of the terrorist attacks in Paris, saying, if the people in Paris had guns themselves, if they were allowed to carry, there'd be bullets going the other direction. I don't think you'd have 130 plus people killed or wounded. And, took a lot of heat for that. And he's been saying lots of things about the Second Amendment and how he wants to strengthen it. And just to say he's going to write it out of the Constitution and he's indistinguishable from Bernie Sanders on the Second Amendment, I mean, come on, for Pete's sakes. I mean, that's absurd. And, this is a guy who Trump has noted, and lots of other people have noted it too, holds the Bible up in one hand, waves it around, plays the Jesus card, and then is lying or saying things that can be proven to be factually untrue, at the same time. With Cruz, I always get the feel like he's about to tell me to put my hand on the television and pray to Jesus and then donate to his website. But you might want to actually follow some of the values of the religion that you claim to hold so strongly. Like not
A
lying
couple of
indiscriminately.
a couple of thou shalt not bear false witnesses might not go amiss.
you
Because
know,
Trump also claims that he packs, right? I mean, so he's packing heat, and so the idea that he would dump the First Amendment, Second Amendment, when he himself carries weapons would be a little less than, Obama, sure, hasn't handled a gun since he had within a water pistol fight at the age of 7, but I think Trump is not in that category of people who avoid guns.
yeah, he's one of the few people that actually has a license to concealed carry in New York City. And, he's been a member of the NRA, and he's talked about a lot of favorable gun legislation that, gun rights people are excited about. So, I don't know. Just pulling that out of left field. I mean, there's things you can criticize Trump on. Eminent domain and that type of stuff is pretty low on the list. But if you're just making shit up, come on. Don't expect to be
Well,
taken
again,
seriously.
that's what happens, of course, is I don't know if these people know about this little thing called the internet, but when you make claims like that, comments start immediately filling in. That's not true. Here's the proof, and so on. The vetting is no longer a slow, laborious process that it comes out a week and a half in a sort of section of the newspaper under errors and omissions, which sometimes seems to be half the entire New York Times. But the vetting is like immediate. And all you're saying is saying two things. Number one, you are saying things that aren't true. And number two, this is the best you got.
Hmm.
Like if the best you've got is things that are easily unproven, then you don't have anything good to criticize the guy on. And it's actually kind of a tacit endorsement.
Yep. Next on the list for Cruz is he just recently was talking about abortion and saying if Trump is elected, it's essentially going to be open season on abortion, late-term abortions, the whole ball of wax. And, he's going to appoint all these liberal judges to the Supreme Court, which is now a bit more of an issue than it was even a week ago. And, it's just like, yes, we know he changed his abortion position. It's odd that Donald Trump, when he changes his position on something, A, he acknowledges that he changed his position on it. B, he's got a reason explaining why he changed his position on it. Whereas when Ted Cruz changes his mind on something, he doesn't admit that he ever had a previous position that was otherwise. And he's such a skilled rhetorician as a lawyer that he's able to mince his words over the course of a decade so it sounds plausible in some way. And you could maybe argue it, even though his statements, when put next to each other on a timeline, look really, really, really dishonest. And I suggest that people go and read The Real Ted Cruz, which is an article for Slate.com, which has a full timeline of his immigration comments. And it's amazing. I mean, like, I'm almost in awe of how gifted Ted Cruz is against actually taking a position when it's politically non-expedient for him to take a position. He's able to wiggle word enough to where it's like, well, he could go this way or this way, just depending on, how things slide. It's really, it's impressive. Oh my God, it's scary as hell. That you have someone
You
that's that
spin
gifted.
me right round, baby, right? No, but Mike, see, here's the thing. This is in Ted Cruz's defense. It is very, very hard to be an n-dimensional triple agent. And I don't think that you and I can really understand how difficult it is to seem to be working for people on a particular position, but to be working against them with the opposite underbelly of working for them while against them, but for them. Now, Ted Cruz can handle that kind of complexity, which is why it's hard for us mere mortals to understand his positions, because they are n-dimensional Mobius strips of highly complex triple agent complexity. So it is basically like if you can't follow him, just defer to him, because he's clearly that smart. And, I'm sure many people will be willing to do that.
Yeah, and in Cruz's defense, too, I will say there are things that he gets accused of lying about or changing his position on, which he absolutely hasn't. Ethanol and gun rights being two of the main ones. Harry Reid put out a thing claiming that Cruz had flip-flopped on gun rights and all that years ago, and that's complete nonsense. So you can go check out our Truth About Ted Cruz presentation for more on that. But there's significant things that Cruz has either, minced his words on, treaded very carefully to not take a position about, which, it's politics. You expect people to do that kind of thing. But, like, the vitriol in which he throws at people for, being inconsistent, when he himself is, been relatively inconsistent in not taking a position while claiming he had strongly taken a position for certain years, or, making statements that are incredibly confusing if you're not aware of his secret plan, and then asking him about those years later, and he's like, I cannot believe you would dare insinuate that I believe this thing that I was saying with strong confidence at the floor of the Senate. Like, come on, Ted. Come on, I don't want to be a mind reader here. I'd like to take you at face value, but it's clear that cannot be done. So yeah, now we have a showdown and a deadline where Donald Trump has threatened a lawsuit if Ted Cruz doesn't come out, apologize, and retract his statements. And, it's not like Donald Trump threatens lawsuits indiscriminately. This is the man that sued Bill Maher for claiming that he would donate money to a charity if Donald Trump could prove that he was not the spawn of an orangutan. And
I think the orangutan also sued as well, to be fair.
And Trump produced his birth certificate to Bill Maher and then sued Bill Maher when he wouldn't follow up on donating to charity, which, it's legal trolling, but it's also kind of hilarious, frankly, I gotta say.
Well, he also sued Univision for, what, $500 million for breach of contract?
That case was just settled, and, those results are sealed, so we don't know what happened, but, to what extent Univision is now paying for the Donald Trump campaign, that might have something to do with it. Did the same thing with NBC. They settled out of court, and he ended up selling his ownership in the Miss Universe pageant. He got 100% of it from NBC, who was the other 50% partner, and then he sold it immediately to someone else. Unquestionably, I gotta imagine he made a bit of a profit on it, and probably using that money to fund his campaign as well. So, man's not an idiot, and now we have a showdown, where the only thing the media is going to be talking about over the course of the next several days is, Ted Cruz. Donald Trump might sue him for lying. Well, what did he lie about? Here's all these statements that Ted Cruz lied about. Let's say Ted Cruz and liar in the same sentence more times, over and over and over, until people just associate Ted Cruz with lying, which, based on empirical evidence, does seem to be the case. But, from a sheer politics standpoint, it's brilliant. It really is brilliant. It's low-energy Jeb Bush. It's Marco Rubio the robot. I mean, this is... people might want to pay attention to this stuff if they have any desire of entering politics, because he is ungodly effective at branding people with these terms. And, when you're dealing with the average voter, this stuff works.
And, as far as I know, he was not the first to go negative. He was hoping that there'd be a little bit more of a high road. But I guess when he started to succeed and they didn't have good arguments against him and were unwilling to adopt his positions, because that's really the challenge in politics, is that if someone is succeeding by putting forward positions that you have either avoided or repudiated, like immigration or whatever, then you can either change and follow this person, in which case you're an also-ran flip-flopper, who's trying to catch up, which won't work. Or, you've got to oppose his positions, which they still seem to be kind of doing, which is not going to work out that well. Like 66% of those polled coming out of the caucus on the Republican side said that they were very much in favor of the ban on Muslim immigration. My personal belief, as I've mentioned, is that this is a precursor to people saying, that's racist, you can't just ban Muslim immigration, to which he'll say, okay, let's just ban all immigration for a while and to see how that works, which, blacks and Hispanics should love, because it will mean that there'll be fewer people competing for those jobs and standard of living should go up and all of that. But what are you going to do in politics if the guy who is taking on positions you've repudiated or avoided is tearing up the place? All you can do is go negative, because you can't catch up and you can't change your own position, because otherwise you're flip-flopping. Plus, of course, you've got donor money for your positions. And if you flip-flop them, the donors are going to eat you alive. Yeah. So it's, one of the reasons to go negative. One
of the reasons that Trump is still going after Jeb Bush, despite the fact that Jeb Bush is polling so badly, is because he's taken out an absurd amount of money. I think it was $20 million. Over like the last several months in negative ads just directed towards Trump. So it's like, well, if you're going to spend that much money on negatively attacking me, I'm going to hit back. You're not going to get free shots.
That's what he's always said.
Yeah, you're not going to get free shots.
I'm sure he's read, that treat people the best you can, and after that, treat them. Like the first time you meet people, treat them the best you can, and after that, treat them the way they treat you. That's the most successful strategy. And he is, in his own way, I really genuinely believe that he is trying to elevate the discourse a little bit away from this Trump ate my baby. Trump is a dingo in Australia. I think he's trying to say, let's get back to the issues and stop all this lying and stop all of these attack ads and so on. And this is his way of attempting to elevate the discourse.
He actually pulled
trying to elevate the discourse in American politics is, like trying to bring ballet to the strip club, but, maybe it'll work.
Trump actually pulled his negative attack ads on Cruz before the debate, saying, let's just go positive. I don't want to do more of this. And then, then Cruz did what he did. He said, put him back up. Just put him back up.
Worth a
And
try.
and Cruz and Trump had a bit of a bromance there for a while, as Cruz was one of the few people that wouldn't vociferously attack Trump at a given moment. Carson was the other one. Carson and Trump started going at it when Carson started to rise and actually was beating Trump in Iowa for a brief period of time. And then Trump baited him with talking about how he's kind of low energy and doesn't have the vim and vigor. And then Carson walked into it and pushed back, said, "No, I got vim and vigor. I once hit my mom on the head with a hammer." There's
I
actually
almost stabbed a guy to death.
there's actually the interview where they ask him about the comments that Trump has recently made about him, and he defends it by saying, "I once, when I was really angry when I was younger, and blah blah blah." And there's unquestionably the guy that's done 16-hour neurosurgeries has great stamina, but he walked into this low energy thing and just opened up the entire discussion about, hey, did you know that Ben Carson has claimed to hit his mother in the head with a hammer and, stabbed a guy in a belt buckle in this kind of weirdly implausible situation. And then let's look more into Ben Carson. And, he claims that he was failing an exam in college, but then he had a dream and Jesus gave him the test answers. Yes, he actually claimed this. Look at the truth about Ben Carson for more on this situation. And then Ben Carson just immediately imploded.
Okay, so if I understand it, Ben Carson's synapses formed the following game plan. Something like this. And people can go to, we've done a presentation, The Truth About Ben Carson, which you'll link to below. This has been, in Ben Carson's brain, this is a good plan. Okay. Dr. Carson, Donald Trump says that you're kind of low energy, kind of, sleep-inducing and so on. And Ben Carson's response is, I'm Ben Carson. I have two modes. Kind of sleepy and murderous. Do you want to put me in a really high-stress job for a lot of time and see which one wins? How could that be a good strategy?
I have pathological anger.
But I've pushed it down for the last 40 years. Want to give me some nuclear codes? Let's flip a coin.
Oh. That'll work good. My previous job...
Who's coming out today? Who's coming out today?
My previous job was cutting into human flesh. My next job...
Sublimated sociopathy for the win! Anyway. All right. So I guess...
And then Cruz and Trump had the bromance going on, and then Iowa was must-win for Cruz. He spent so much money in Iowa that as it got closer and closer, and they jostled back and forth in the polls, and and Cruz at the end went full negative on Trump because he's got to win Iowa. Spent so much time, energy, and effort in Iowa. If he didn't win Iowa, that was going to be a big problem for him. So, and as evidenced by the other stuff he did with like that voter violation mailer and other stuff, it just showed his desperation regarding wanting to win Iowa. He went negative on Trump, and if you go negative on Trump, Trump's going to go negative on you. And, people can be the judge as to who's got the better of that exchange, but we're going to see what happens, and if Ted Cruz is going to have a lawsuit filed against him by Donald Trump, who most definitely has standing to pursue the question of if Cruz is a natural-born citizen or not. So, interesting times.
And look, at one point we will, promise to you viewers and listeners that we will, in fact, report on a Democrat debate.
Please don't make me watch another Democrat debate. Please don't. On. There's not even O'Malley up there to give you a respite from socialism to war on women, Hillary Clinton style lying. There's really, I don't know.
We'll do Cuck versus Cankles at some point, but right now, it's just more fun. Sorry. And I just wanted to mention this, which I thought was one of the funniest comments I saw on the internet. I don't even know why. This is a woman who posted and said, I think the next debate should have Vince McMahon as the moderator. And instead of a time is up bell, Stone Cold Steve Austin should cold cock them with a folding chair. I just thought that was really funny. And underneath she wrote, oh, a girl can dream.
There's a lot of people that are totally pearl-clutching about, they were really going after each other in this debate, and this is terrible. The thin veneer of civility is part of... Yeah! This is what politics is, folks. This is what it is. You're finally getting an honest representation of what politics is. It's a dirty, disgusting, vile game, and it played out on television for everyone to watch, and I don't know. It was kind of entertaining.
Imagine if politicians had had these kinds of debates about the Iraq War, there might not have been an Iraq War and everything that happened after that. Give me the
Yep.
messy conversations up front rather than the wars after the fact. That's what Paul Joseph Watson was talking about with regards to Europe. You can
Hmm.
suppress these conversations about migrants, and all that's going to happen is you're going to get gangs erupting in the street with pitched battles and broken bottles. I'd rather have these messy, ugly conversations up front. And the fact that there's a crack in the American discourse to talk about the Iraq War opened up by Trump, God, I mean, yes, now they have to report on it. Now people are going to it's actually, it's a crack in the newspeak. You can actually
Hmm.
talk about this. So what's coming up next? Next is,
Well, the next thing for the Republicans is Saturday, February 20th. There is the South Carolina primary. So that's also Ted Cruz's deadline to withdraw his claims or face Donald Trump's wrath in the courtroom. So that's the next thing for the Republicans, and the Democrats go to South Carolina on February 27th for their sort of South Carolina primary, but they have Nevada up next, which I believe is this weekend as well. Might be early in the week. I'm
so
not exactly
Cruz's
sure.
choice is, yes, I'm a vile liar, or maybe I'm not eligible to run for president. The man wrote The Art of the Deal. Do not, if I limber up a little, me and Superman can go head to head and I'll be fine. It's like,
If
it's not
Ted
a matter of
Cruz,
stretching. It's not a matter of whether you can hit him
Yeah,
with an elbow.
if
The
Ted
man wrote The Art of the Deal.
if Ted Cruz wrote a manual like The Art of the Deal explaining his strategy with his double secret plans regarding immigration as a senator, I might, take what he says with a bit more truth value. But the people that hate Donald Trump, you have to read The Art of the Deal just to understand what the hell is happening. For those that haven't read The Art of the Deal yet, I don't even know what you're doing. This is the biggest political movement to happen in America in a long, long time. I'd even say it eclipses Obama. This is a big deal, and Donald Trump is changing the game in a way that no one else has done in a long time. And to understand why and how he's doing, read it in his own words in The Art of the Deal. It's not even long. It's not even long. You may not want to give Donald Trump royalties. There's excerpts of important sections of it online. Find a way to read this. Go to a library. It's pretty important, and you might learn a thing or two, which, pretty useful if you want to communicate ideas to people.
It is the biggest change in American politics since the Civil War, I would argue. And it is really an astounding thing to watch. The last thing I wanted to mention, too, is that Trump is it's not just a job interview, it's an audition. Right? No, this is important for people to understand. I'm sure you do too. But when you hire a guy for a coding job, you don't ask him to code in front of you. Now, you hire someone for a singing job, you're going to ask them to sing so you can hear how they sound or whatever. So he's not just doing a job interview like, here's my resume and here's some speeches. People want to know that Donald Trump is going to fight entrenched special interests to open up opportunities for the poor and the middle class. That's when they're hoping that he's going to fight entrenched interests even overseas, that he's going to negotiate hard on the behalf of the folks and behalf of the people. And that's what they want. And that's what he's doing. And that's why he's doing it as well, is that he is auditioning. He's saying, look, you don't think I'm going to fight for what I believe in? Watch me with these guys who are way more experienced. They're all lawyers. They've been doing it forever. They've got the support of everyone. They've got tons of money in their war chest. I know he does too, but it's his money, which is a little different. So he's saying, look, here's how I'm going to fight for the folks. It's not just a job interview like, here's my resume and here's some speeches. He is live action showing how he is going to combat to get what he thinks is right done.
Yeah,
And
Fox
that's
News
a
gave
rare
him a
thing to
really
see.
bad deal for that last Fox debate. They put out that snarky press release, which was just embarrassing to come from a news agency. I mean, even current news agencies, that was embarrassing even by the standard of modern news. And he just said, you know what? No, I know a bad deal when I see it. I'm walking away. I'm doing something else.
Yep.
And people, it's going to hurt his campaign. It's all that. It's like, hey, if there's a bad deal on the table for America, he's going to walk away. He's going to walk away and find some leverage in it.
Well, the hidden thing with that, too, is that of course, the Iowa that came after that debate, the fact that Ted Cruz may have gained some advantage from Trump not going to that debate meant that Ted Cruz ended up doing some pretty questionable and dicey stuff with regards to these mail-outs and with regards to his campaign saying that Carson was leaving the race.
Well, we didn't do
So
a video on
making-
it, but Cruz got eviscerated in that debate. He was the guy at center stage, and everyone was gunning for him, and it was probably his worst debate performance, and even Cruz supporters. There's many of who've said, like, yeah, he didn't do particularly well in that debate. So him being center stage without Donald Trump to suck up all the oxygen in the room, it didn't go particularly well. So maybe Trump benefited a bit from that as well. We don't know. He lost Iowa, but all the weird things that happened around that, who knows what would have happened? But we know he won New Hampshire in overwhelming fashion.
He may have won Iowa in the long run, in that Cruz did some pretty questionable things to clinch his victory. So,
and he's up 20 points in South Carolina, so that's where things currently stand.
And let us, we're going to talk about this stuff either way, so we might as well put it out as a public conversation. But as always, give us thoughts, feedback, comments, questions, issues in the comments. We will have a look at them and, refine to focus on stuff that you guys are the most interested in. And as always, thanks, Mike. A great chat. Let us know what you think, people.
We didn't talk much about Supreme Court Justice Anthony Scalia. In this, that's consciously, we're going to be doing a video on that subject in the very near future. So we're aware we didn't touch on that. It's a huge story that's coming soon. So thanks for listening, everyone.
Absolutely. All right. And freedomainradio.com/donate to help us out with the show. We really appreciate that as well. And have yourself a great night. We look forward to your feedback.